In order to get a tie rod out from the steering knuckle, see this casting piece right here has a tapered hole. Okay, it's tapered to match the stud from the tie rod. Ball joints work the same way, so everything I do right here applies to a ball joint tapered stud. Okay, so first of all, of course, we've got to get the cotter pin out of the way. Sometimes cotter pins are really a hassle, so what I'm doing is I'm crimping, I'm pinching on the cotter. I'm not cutting it off, I'm just crimping onto it and pulling it out of the hole and using my pliers as a leverage, like that. That's the easiest way to get a cotter pin out. Next, of course, now I'm going to recommend you take the nut, about 70% of the way off, 60–70% of the way off, because I'm going to use a hammer here in a moment to break this loose. I'm not going to hit the tie rod itself, not the ball socket, not this piece that moves. We're going to hit the casting, which is part of what we call the steering knuckle of the car. Now there's different ways to get these removed. Yes, we could use a pickle fork. And you get your big hammer and hit that, but that tears the boot. Now if you're replacing the tie rod, you don't care if the boot gets torn because it comes with a new boot. Sometimes in hard to reach areas you can't get a hammer. This is a must. It's the only approach. So don't rule out a pickle fork ever. Some of the component manufacturers like Moog, they'll say, well, you actually use an air hammer. And I might could even try that a little bit here. Don't hit like this. All you do is crush the threads. There we go. I just made sure it was loose. I don't think many people are going to have an impact hammer like I just used, but everyone's got a big hammer. Get yourself about a 4 to 5 pound sludge. This one's only 3.6 pound. I prefer a 4 or 4.5, and that's how you break a taper. Sometimes going back in with a tie rod. Maybe I've removed the tie rod to maybe change the CV shaft. I'm going to put this back in, and here's what sometimes happens. I'm just going to kind of barely tap it down in the tapered hole. I'm not going to get aggressive, just tapping it in. But my point with this is sometimes when you go to tighten this nut up, the stud that just went in this hole, you'll tighten the nut, and the stud is spinning with the nut, and you can't ever get it tight. Let's see if that'll happen on this demonstration. Sometimes they tighten right up and life's good. Other times they sit there and they spin and they spin. This one's tightening right up. Let me show you how to approach one that just sits there and spins and won't tighten up on you. And I'm going to pry on something somewhere, and my whole goal is to shove this tie rod, that tapered hole, that tapered stud into its hole. Just lean on this really hard. Just pry on that while you tighten it down, or even get an impact gun, an air gun, because that's quick. And with some pressure here and with the impact gun there, it'll usually be able to tighten up just fine. Of course, you're going to want to tighten it up. There's probably a certain torque. Maybe this one's 40 foot-pounds, 45. I didn't look it up. But you want to make sure that the cotter pin hole lines up as well. If you torque it and the cotter pin hole and the castle nut, well, these little slots, and this is what we call a castle nut, don't align, go a little tighter so that your cotter pin can go in just fine. That's the policy. Go a little tighter until the cotter pin hole lines up. And I'll just put that in.